It's July 1941. The hellish spectacle starts all over at night. The ground shakes for an hour from the exploding shells. Shrapnel is whistling over our heads. Flares rise into the skies and light up the smoke. They then direct the fire into our vicinity in heavy batteries. What is going on? Do these Schweine want to attack us as well? Flare after flare rises into the sky. Our faces are white and petrified. No shots are being fired from our side. However, Bofficers, B-Offizier and light and sound measuring troops, Licht- und Schallmessungstrupps, are working feverishly. The fire then becomes weaker. It must be time for their attack. Our eyes try to penetrate the darkness. Where are the red flares? Nothing? Everything is as it was before. The fire slowly dies out. It is now quiet, much too quiet for our nerves. 3:30 hours. Initial fire from 36 batteries suddenly begins. 150 cannons of all size calibers spit their shells across enemy lines. Like the sound of a sawmill, they howl, hiss, and streak through the air. Light flashes along the edge of the forest. These are the impacts of our shelling. We advance along the train tracks under the cover of our firewall. From there, we take over and cover our advancing infantry regiments. The Russians, understanding the importance of such a position, attempt to storm the train tracks. Our shelling has brought them enormous casualties. However, more and more enemy fighters are flocking to the scene. My machine gun barks and spits out its deadly rounds against the attackers. It is magnificent. The railroad embankment provides excellent cover. Not a single shell sprays its splinters near our heads. Prima, prima. Awesome, awesome. It is like a shooting range out here, and it goes on like this for a long time. Our mood is excellent. Some are even making cruel jokes. Oh, how these young men have become so cold-hearted. Yet one should never forget the gravity of the moment during battle. It might just take its bitter revenge, which is what happened in our situation. During target practice, we completely forgot about the right end of the railroad embankment. Despite all our wildfire, the Russians somehow managed to position a heavy machine gun there, and shortly after, a second machine gun. It cost a lot of our sweat and blood to get them off the embankment. We are unable to bring our PAK into position atop the embankment. All that is available to us are our machine guns and a bunch of hand grenades. A lot of hand grenades. We were able to get them off of the embankment within 2 hours. We had one dead and one wounded comrade lying over there behind the bushes. And the day had started so well. It's 2 in the afternoon, the sky is deep blue. It is so hot that one can see the air coming over the embankment in waves. The train tracks are steaming, they're so hot. The ties are slippery and stink from the hot tar. The vapours from the tar are good for the lungs, they say. Scheisse. There is a dead body on the ground over there, shot through the chest. Because of the stupid scene at the other end of the tracks, the Russians have had enough time to entrench themselves just 300 meters from us. If we had enough, we could hammer them with grenades. If we had enough. We've already thrown too many grenades. 2 men went back to retrieve more ammunition, but they don't seem to be coming back. Thank goodness, the Russians have lost their drive to keep attacking us. They are occupied with digging themselves in. They're masters at that. I look carefully to the left. What a splendid view! For as far as I can see, there are plumes of smoke above the impact craters from our shells. The artillery from both sides is doing its job at creating a protective firewall. The position of the Russian fire unfortunately tells me that we have only advanced about 1 kilometre. Reinforcements arrive at night, as we expect a major offensive from the Russians around sunset. If we are unable to receive protection from our artillery, we will hold the embankment with iron will. We wait, and not a single shot is fired. It is getting dark. I am lying between the tracks in a lookout position. What was that? There is a clang and crashing of pieces of metal. Almost immediately one of us fires a flare. Shots are fired, and shortly after bullets from a heavy machine gun whistle over our heads. The Russians used the cover of darkness to approach our position to within 100 meters and commence a hellish concert. The bursts of their machine gun fire are situated only a couple hands wide above the top of the embankment. Series of rounds strike the train tracks. A few projectiles ricochet off the train tracks in sloping trajectories. The singing of infantry carbines can be easily distinguished from the buzzing and hammering of the heavy machine guns. The damn Russian water-cooled machine guns crackle like 1,000 alarm clocks. We carefully bring a pack into position onto one of the canals below the embankment to our right. A large group of soldiers is also deployed to protect the cannon. Only 5 comrades return the next morning after this suicide mission. We are unable to shoot due to our lack of visibility and our need to save the flares for a later moment. We just lie there and wait. We keep our carbines or machine guns positioned in our arms, our legs bent, prepared to jump up and fire. Our hands grip reassuringly our grenades and ammo clips. The light machine gun crews are sitting alert, ready to tilt the barrel and start firing. As the fire pauses, I realize that it is my neighbor, the greenhorn, who received the letter earlier today that made me so angry. He rolled down the embankment, dead from a shot to the head. Poor guy. He had just shown me pictures of his young wife this morning. The shooting, however, has picked up again. New showers of shrapnel are raining down. The air is filled with singing and whining. Ricocheting bullets howl. It sounds like the crackling of a fire or the blazing of spruce trees. The mad fire suddenly subsides. A final few hungry carbines are still spitting their last bullets from their clips. Then absolute silence. We leap up onto the railroad embankment, staring and listening into the night. We cup our hands behind our ears as funnels in order to improve our hearing. Then flares soar up into the sky, burst and sail slowly to the ground. More flares rise up, and we continue to stare and listen. The stillness is disturbing. We can feel our hearts beating in our chests and temples. Our hands search reassuringly for hand grenades. More flares take off like fireworks. Now we can see them coming, those red bastards, that Asian mob. Night attacks are a particular specialty of this gang. Flare after flare shoots into the sky. We open fire from a distance of 150 meters. Our shells slam into the attackers' lines and tear open large holes. However, it is night, and the terrain is full of natural obstacles. Wave after wave approaches. A bitter battle of man against man is being waged along the canal to the right of the embankment. The cannon over there is out of ammunition, and the Russians finish off its crew. Our machine guns are still able to keep the bastards away from us, but for how much longer? Messengers return to HQ. Verflucht nochmal. Damn it. Artillery fire is the only thing that can help us here. We shoot signal flares into the sky again and again. In between, enemy flares illuminate the scene. Red tracers also soar into the air in the neighbouring sector. What wonderful fireworks! What a grandiose illumination of fear and horror! We receive orders to retreat to our baseline positions. The entire front line must be pulled back to its original position. Damn it, it is unbelievable that we must retreat. We, the 299th Infantry Division, have to run. German soldiers have to abandon the field to those Russian Schweine. Now the drama of the retreat is beginning, which costs us many dead and wounded. We reach our original positions around 2 o'clock hours. Our artillery provides us cover. A Sturmgeschütz, assault gun group, takes over our section of the front. We are pulled back about 3 kilometers. A mass dropping of Russian paratroopers is expected in this area to the rear of our artillery positions, and we are the ones who will have to deal with them. Shrapnel trenches are dug in great haste. They must be dug deeper since there are no tree trunks in the area to use for cover. This is a dismal landscape. Apparently the Reds cut down all the trees years ago and kept the water, rendering large areas into swamps. Man-high bushes cover the areas of open marshes, but not US attackers. The Russians, masters of camouflage and the construction of tactical barriers, have erected their HQ alongside a large forest at the northern entrance to this cauldron of a landscape. The perimeter of the forest was left to grow wild and is therefore covered with hedges and swamp bogs. Beneath the hedges, they have dug escape tunnels about 2 meters deep, which can be flooded in case of emergency. The bunkers for the positioning of their machine guns are grown over with vegetation. Even with the best optical instruments, it is impossible to make them out. A deserter has told us that hundreds of rangers and soldiers worked for years to transform this area into its present condition. Villages that are still indicated on our maps have disappeared. Trails and roads were mined a month ago. Grass was then seeded above the mines, trails and roads. Hand grenades that were suspended on wires in the bushes have also ripped apart 2 comrades this morning. The shrapnel trenches are complete, the vehicles have been camouflaged, and cannons dug into the ground in semicircle formation. We await anything that might come. The artillery puts on a great show. The second attack started at 5 o'clock this morning. Howitzers, right before us, incessantly spray their shrapnel into the air. Our very heavy equipment buzzes and rumbles further behind us. Their heavy shells fly close above our heads, targeting bridges, important roads, and mobile ammunition depots, which are 20 to 25 kilometers behind Russian lines. Meanwhile, it is now noon. Brutal heat is bearing down on the trenches and swamps all around us. The blaze of the sun is driving me insane. My eyes burn from all that staring up into the sun. My head hurts as if being pricked by 1,000 needles. Damn it! Do not pass out! Hannes, it is disgusting. Our clothes are sticking to our bodies. A stinking broth, a mixture of sweat and 8 days of dirt are underneath my helmet and runs down my cheeks only to disappear into my collar. Damn this trench warfare. Damn this stupid swamp without any shade or water to drink. Russian reconnaissance aircraft appear in the afternoon at low altitude. The obligatory attack starts shortly after. However, it does not cause any damage. From time to time they shoot at our position, attempting to locate our ordnance, yet they have no luck. The enemy fire slowly dies down by sunset. Messengers relay the latest news. The front line has advanced by 1,000 meters. We are very excited about the news, even if it is only a kilometer. We have been humbled during these dreadful days. Except for having to take turns on watch, we all got a few hours' sleep last night. Wow, we got some real sleep. Yes, it really does exist. This, of course, doesn't mean that these few hours of sleep have really refreshed us. The opposite is true. I feel groggy. All my bones ache from sleeping crouched in a hole. So get out of the trench and shake those bones. Though most of us don't have the chance to do so, since the Russians plant a round of good morning fire at our position. All of the bushes in front of us have been trimmed. The best gardeners could hardly have done a better job. Unbelievable, comrade. It could have all gone wrong. Someone tells us that he has seen phantom troops. Another reports that they have gone into position behind our lines. Someone else is talking about new weapons and a mysterious DO device that has been brought into position in order to be used for the very first time to break through the tough Russian resistance. An enormous detonation from cannon fire disrupts our guesswork. A single pounding impact and a yellowish-white wall of smoke rises up about 500 meters, blocking out the sun for a short time. Hundreds of missiles, they must be missiles gauging from the smoke tail, howl through the air toward the enemy. A second, third and fourth round follow soon after. This is a rare spectacle. We have left our trenches and are standing on top of the cover to admire the show. It has beaten the wind out of the Russians, who have not fired a single shot from the other side. I get more information about the spectacle at noon. The DO device is able to fire multiple rocket-propelled shells simultaneously. The shells are filled with flame oil. Once the projectile hits the ground, the flame oil splatters everywhere, setting everything ablaze. The effect must be devastating. Despite this, the Russians continue to hold their positions. Our heads are blooded when we attempt to break through enemy positions on part of the border. The Reds are beginning their counterattack. We manage to bring it to a halt, though with a number of casualties larger than theirs. We have almost reached the end of our fighting strength. The unbearable heat and the brutality of combat have battered us. We will only be able to take the waves of Russian attacks for a little while longer. We need fresh troops. In the past 2 days, infantry regiments 529 and 528 have lost 380 and 304 men, respectively. The replacements are coming too slowly. Enormous projectiles are crashing into our positions. They rip large chunks out of the ground. What an honour it is that these gentlemen are wasting their large calibers on a bunch of poor ants like us. It is getting serious now. The Reds have brought railroad cannons onto the track in the direction of Zhytomyr, Ukraine, where they are out of reach of our ordnance. In the evening, the Russian Schweine attack us under the cover of heavy fire. They managed to push us back a few kilometers to the outskirts of the town. I could cry out of anger and frustration. Nothing works anymore. My body does not want to cooperate any longer. My nerves are singing like the wires of a telegraph. Will I ever see my home again? Today's toll: 20 dead, 11 missing, and 163 wounded. Dear Roselle, my Butsiben, keep your dad in dear memory. We are ordered to attack this morning at 8 o'clock hours. However, yesterday's thunderstorm has flooded the roads and rendered them impassable. What now? The following radio message arrives around 9 o'clock. Attack postponed. Reorganize into defensive formation. So the Russians are going to attack again. Yes, and how badly they attack. The large calibers buzz over into our positions. Whole series of shells are accompanied by smaller calibers and rounds with tremendous shrapnel capacity. In sequence, bombers drop their eggs at low altitude. Fighters spew forth rounds of machine gun fire into our trenches. It is a hellish spectacle capable of robbing a man of his sanity. Half crazy, we crouch down in our trenches. All around us, the ground is being thrown into the air, right before our very eyes. To our left and right, to our rear. Flames dart everywhere. My hair is charred. A large chunk of soil flies against my helmet and knocks me out for a brief moment. And then they come, the Roten Teufel, Red Devils. Hurrah! Hurrah! The first ones close in on us to within 50 meters. We clamber out of our trenches. The machine gun crews stay behind to give us cover. Are these the same people? Their faces are distorted beyond recognition. The hate and endless anger against these bloodhounds switches off any sort of thinking. We end the attack half an hour later. I do not remember the details of the butchery. It is unbelievable but true. We ran forward like homicidal maniacs. We shot, slashed and beat. We fell down, got up and stormed forward again. I am just not able to remember all of the details. And look at us. My shirt is torn, my hands and knees are bleeding, and there are traces of blood all over my uniform. On the collar of my left boot hangs a piece of pulverized brain. I have to vomit. Enough. Now comes the reaction. I feel dizzy and have cold chills, nerve fever. I slept 20 hours straight and am feeling much better now. Large caliber shells and bombs have changed a great deal the appearance of our position. I can only wonder about this. I did not notice any of the fire spectacles while I was lying well protected in the medic's tent. I must have been sleeping like the dead. A shimmering heat lingers over our position. Water sits in large puddles in our muddy trenches and gives off an odour of decay. The air and the ground are alive with insects. Black masses of flies gather on anything edible. Apart from some light artillery fire, it has been a relatively quiet today. The rest has done me well. We are further encouraged by the words of 6th Army's Field Marshal Walter von Reichenau. He sends us his greatest respect for our courage and bravery. The front line has not moved. There has been no combat worth mentioning. Every now and then there are single rifle shots, the chugging of a machine gun, or even a few rounds of artillery. Bombers attack our position around noon. A stockpile of ammunition was hit. The explosion tears 8 comrades apart, and many more are wounded. The loud blare of battle is coming from both the left and right flanks. Divisions of fresh troops are apparently attacking there and are making good progress. Will the Russians finally have to run? We are blessed with enemy fire this morning. Their shelling hammers into our positions for an hour, and Ratas appear as a surprise. They are flying about 20 meters over our heads and fire into our columns. The spectacle is then suddenly over. Shots are no longer being fired by them. Then we get the message that the Russians are retreating. We can't believe it. We've gotten excited over one too many false messages during these past few days. And yet, it is all true. Our artillery fires into units of fleeing Russians. Orders for an attack arrive in the afternoon. By dusk, we conquer a stretch of about 4 kilometers of the Forest of the Dead northeast of Zwierhel. The terrible 10 days of trench warfare, with all of its horrors, hours of artillery fire, and bloody man-to-man combat, is finally over. Our eyes are filled with tears of joy. The Reds must have had tremendous casualties, since our artillery fire was correctly targeted. Shreds of tree trunks are all over the ground. Our shelling has ripped apart the forest floor. Among the destruction lie hundreds of bodies, demolished gear, vehicles, and every type of gun. Bodies of the hated enemy lie in massive piles in front of their positions. The bodies are blackened and swollen by the heat. The terrible, pungent smell of decay looms over the entire forest. Many of our comrades can finally be buried. Much of the details of the battles during these last days remind me of the grim forest battles in La Besace, France, a year ago. But the Russian is a different opponent than the Belgians and French. At that time we fought against men who, as soldiers, applied intelligence, endurance, and experience. The enemy here resembles a dull, indifferent, soulless machine of destruction and death. At our leisure we took the Russians in our vice grip. The French would have learned from experience and attempted to avoid unnecessary casualties. These guys here fight like mad until nothing moves. They never surrender. This evening we suddenly receive artillery fire out of the blue. I go on watch during the night, those eerie hours. We know that there are still many Russian Schweine hidden in the forest. The night is pitch black. Every creek in the woods could be a Russian lurking around. I'm at my wit's end. Morning finally arrives and brings with it the obligatory artillery fire. I'm hungry. Food has been sparse and bad for days now. Cigarettes, the Cola Dahlmann, a popular cola-based candy of the German soldier, are also no longer available. It is raining. The damn stench of the dead bodies is worse than ever. We have the worst case of malaria. Reading Roselle's letters is my only joy. I pray to God that I return safe and sound. The Reds have moved into a new defensive position which they try to hold on to with all of their might. This is the third line of the Novigrad-Volynok-Zwierhel bunkers, part of the Stalin line. We've gotten a few bloody heads trying to storm those damn concrete bunkers. Because we are so exhausted, they don't expect us to venture into a second round of attacks. Thank God. We are being replaced by fresh troops. We remain on alert in the forest. We dig our trenches close to a group of artillery cannons which had been moved in as reinforcements. Since we have always been the first line of defence, we have never had the opportunity to see the firing of the 21 centimetres long barrel cannons at close range. Our eyes and mouths are wide open in awe of these guns, first in awe, then to protect our eardrums. Such a monster requires a crew of 40. It fires up to a distance of 40 kilometres. The projectile weighs 3 centners, approximately 150 kilograms or 330 lbs. The effect of its shrapnel covers an area of approximately 1,000 metres, enough to yank the molars out of many Russians at no extra charge. A single shot costs about 2,000 Reichsmark. People, come to the donation box. Who has not donated yet? Who still wants to buy a W8W lottery ticket? 2,000 marks a pop. That is the combined income of the Praunheim and Romerstadt donation boxes. Prepare yourselves, collectors, as many more shots are being fired today. And by the way, the cannons here are booty from Czechoslovakia and were manufactured by Skoda. They were built for the Turkish army but ended up in the German army. Yes, indeed, the Sudetenland campaign has indeed brought something good. Our commander gives a speech in the afternoon that fills us with pride. The 299th Infantry Division has been able to withstand the pressure from the Russian Fifth Army for days now. The Russians deployed into battle their elite troops from the Moscow Defence Force. Their one last task is to push a wedge between us and Group von Kleist. They will fail. Crucial operations in the south are in jeopardy. We are all now well aware of the situation and will fight until the last man is left standing. We face several difficult hours ahead. Enormous casualties have weakened our fighting power. The Moscow radio station broadcast yesterday that the 298th and 299th Infantry Divisions were destroyed near Zwierhel. Nothing more than wishful thinking. It's not over yet. Did we not just beat you by 5 hours in reaching the Sluts River? Is that your reason for barking into the microphone? You guys could barely run fast enough. We'll teach you how to run, but in the opposite direction. Unbelievable. Our tired bunch is ordered to rest for a few days in a neighbouring village. This good news has caught us by surprise. It's about time. The casualties would otherwise be great. We move into the village in separate groups this morning. It has been severely destroyed from our artillery fire. All that remain of its original inhabitants can be found on 4 or 5 farms at most. They stand in front of their cottages with curiosity rather than anger in their faces. Perhaps they just have good self-control. They must be curious about what will happen next. Our first mission is to split up and search for food. Min Bon was very lucky. He found a pack of Mahorka, Soviet brand of tobacco. The good soul is standing out on the side of the road, handing it out to us. Everybody gets a small portion. We sit down and start to split some old newspapers. Some pull the Schweißlappen, strips of newspaper used inside boots, out of their boots. Soon the entire first platoon is steaming like a train station. This Mahorka is really bad stuff, though since all we've been smoking these past few days is grass, leaves and all kinds of herbs, it tastes like the best Italian tobacco. We set up camp on a meadow on the outskirts of the village. We pitch our tents and dig foxholes for cover. The wandering plumber store, guys who are responsible for all of the pots, pans and cooking equipment, are relieved of their precious load. Frying and cooking takes place soon thereafter. After eating, we just sit around, staring into the evening sky, not worrying about the front line at all. No one will ever know how it all started. Out of the blue, someone starts singing a song in a clear tenor voice. All of a sudden it gets so quiet that Min Bon's cigarette slips out of his mouth. Now that I think about it, his mouth was actually quite wide open. Others start singing along, and soon the whole bunch is singing. Some just sit with their arms around their knees. Others lie on their backs, using their arms under their heads as pillows. The singing becomes louder and louder. "Brave little soldier's wife, we will come home soon." The song, "My home stands in the most beautiful meadow," starts up after a short pause, and everyone is singing. Workers, farmers, teachers and businessmen are all singing together. They have all become comrades in their grey uniforms. With their steel helmets and in the face of death, they sing this melancholy song line by line and with devotion. They fill each line with their longing for peace, tranquility, their wives and kids. They do not have their own words for the emotions that dominate their spirits. It is awkward for them to express their emotions, which is why they sing a song about the house or valley where they were born. There is a gorgeous sky full of stars above me. Those same stars are also right now above my house in Westhausen. Are you thinking of me, my dear Roselle? After about 10 hours of quality sleep, I get up to take a close look around the village. Groups of refugees, mostly women and children, arrive from all directions. They had been hiding out in the surrounding woods. The men of the village were forced to fight for the Reds and have fallen dead in their houses and on the streets. There are shocking scenes everywhere we turn. Women are looking for their dead husbands and brothers. Children are finding the torn-apart bodies of their fathers. Horrible images. A woman with an infant in her arms tries to pull the dead body of her husband into an old foxhole in order to bury him. An elderly couple is seated at the corner of a house. The old man is hunched over, dead. The babushka, Russian for grandmother, leans against her husband, her eyes fixated on the horror surrounding them. Their sons and grandsons lie inside the house in large black pools of blood. She has lost her voice, and her soul is forever dead. A little further away, a group of about 20 comrades lie mowed down from machine gun fire. 2 dead fighters, gripped in a deadly man-against-man fight, lie dead in the neighbouring garden. The Red is still grasping onto his bayonet in his rigid hand. Gauging from the wound, he had stabbed the German in the neck. The Red's head is swollen. The German's hands are still clinched around the neck of the Russian like iron clamps. I know all too well the horror of man fighting against man. We are unable to separate all the bodies, so both friend and foe are buried together. In hole after hole, we bury 21 of our best comrades. 58 Russians are buried in a mass grave. The heat is unbearable. The stench of decay is disgusting. We hold handkerchiefs in front of our faces to protect ourselves from it. We have to use force to pull the women and children away from their dead relatives. The risk of infection is also very high. My knees are weak on our way back home. Is it because of the brutal heat or the horrific images? Alternating periods of sun and rain showers. It is like a greenhouse in the swamps, and we must take quinine tablets to prevent the spread of malaria. After weeks of continuous exhaustion, many symptoms start to take effect during this time of rest. One comrade has nerve fever, febris nervosa. During the attacks, he jumps up, shoots about, and tries to attack the Reds, but there aren't any. The poor devil is going to be transported further to the rear this afternoon. Most, however, are suffering from serious intestinal diseases, also known as shitting uncontrollably. I am one of them. But this is nothing in comparison to the bloody battles fought during this past week. We are so deeply thankful for having this chance to rest. One could wallow in self-glorification, after all the laudatory speeches we've heard. Your admirable accomplishments will find their place in history. Your bravery is unprecedented, and so on. It goes like this the entire day. The commander of the division, the commander of the corps, and Field Marshal Reichenau, all of them have suddenly taken us into their hearts. We have been promised French wine, champagne, chocolate, cigarettes, and sardines. Poor old stomach. How will you cope with all of these delicacies? Well, at least we are happy. However, we have done nothing more than our duty. We receive good news from the front. The Russians are retreating to Korostan, Ukraine, all while desperately trying to fight. Our days of rest are over. We are advancing to Kiev. Zhytomyr fell after severe street battles. Occasionally, Russian tanks advance in order to give cover to the retreating Bolsheviks. Russian fighters and bombers are making our lives miserable. Our convoys are repeatedly rewarding their targets. The red masses pull back to Kiev, which is apparently heavily fortified. Once again, there's going to be difficult urban combat. We advance kilometre after kilometre under light artillery fire and minor infantry fights. We take a short break 40 kilometres past Zhytomyr. The same subject dominates our conversations. When will this campaign be over? Someone spread a rumour that we will be dismissed after this mess. What an immature religious belief. First, I think that the Russian campaign will last much longer. I even voice this opinion in contrast to those officers who believe that it will be over within 2 months. Second, does anyone believe that glorious veteran fighters like us will be sent home to search for fishing worms in their gardens? We shall see if I am not right on at least one of these points. At the beginning of August, 1941, we stop in a small pine forest with a tiny lake. As we will be here for a few hours, we peel our sweaty uniforms from our bodies and jump into the pea-warm, dirty water. But this joy is short-lived. Rutters suddenly appear and hammer quite a few rounds over our heads. Right at the beginning of the attack, a hand grenade kills one of our own. What a damn mess. Wet as dogs, we quickly put our clothes back on and take cover under the trees. Just in time, 10 Martin bombers appear soon after. All of a sudden there are smoke trails, soon followed by detonations. God damn it, we are very lucky. When the yellow smoke clears, we can see that exactly where our camp would have been is now covered with craters from the shelling. The Russian fighters are unpleasantly active these days. We had a bad surprise yesterday afternoon. 3 heavy aircraft flew over us at an extremely low altitude. Since they did not fire, we didn't pay much attention. Shortly after, we hear wild machine gun fire to our rear. A team of scouts, including myself, is assembled to go back and see what is going on. As we reach the edge of the forest, we see a group of about 15 civilians running like mad onto a bridge. Suddenly, something whistles above our heads. We throw ourselves to the ground and simultaneously 5 or 6 hand grenades explode with a deafening bang just a few meters away from us. In short bursts, we sprint from cover to cover in order to approach the group. With great effort, we manage to cut off access to the bridge for this ferocious firing group. We find the big surprise in the meadow. Parachutes. Russian soldiers in civilian clothes had jumped from the aircraft with order to destroy this important bridge. What a lucky coincidence that we caught them and prevented the bridge assault at the last minute. Their boxes full of dynamite would have been enough to destroy an entire city neighborhood. One of the paratroopers has unfortunately managed to escape. A burst from his machine gun killed one of our comrades and seriously wounded another. It is not much further to Kiev. We see it on the map and are able to feel it from the desperate resistance we encounter. We are only able to make slow progress. The first line of bunkers lies in front of us. Apparently there are a dozen or more lines of various fortifications past that. Bunkers, minefields, swamps, automatic flamethrower traps, and who knows what else. Difficult hours and days are ahead of us. but we have become so stubborn that nothing is able to shock us anymore. We no longer care about the crashing blows, the low hum of bombs dropping from aircraft, and the chirping of machine gun bursts. Life on the front has made me a fatalist. Now everything is up to fate. How else could we carry on? Shells have ploughed our lines. The ground was propelled into the air just a few meters in front of me. A shower of glowing hot shrapnel rains down on us. Comrades to the left and right have been torn apart. My uniform is splattered with their blood. The blow throws me on my back, yet I am not hurt. Fate. If I've made it all right through the hell of Zweia Hell with its 1,000 dead, then things will go well in the future. It is our wedding anniversary, dear Roselle. Do you still remember this? One evening we were sitting outside in the garden at Hausen. It was also August 3rd, and your stupid husband had completely forgotten that it was our anniversary. I could really tell how upset you were about my mistake. Here it is again, August 3rd, a day of non-stop fighting and casualties. Yet I remember our wedding anniversary. I thank fate for allowing our paths to cross and making you, my darling, my wife and the mother of our beloved Erica. Please God, let me return home safely, so that I can make up for my mistake and still have time to catch up on everything. Despite fierce resistance, we managed to break through enemy lines in the evening. We are making good progress. We are now about 15 kilometers from Kiev. The Weita line is before us and is fortified with all the bells and whistles. 3 well-performed attacks are knocked off by the Russians. Indeed, that is not the way to do it. It appears that there are problems at HQ, as things are not going as planned. There are changes in the command structure, and a few generals are exchanged. The number of casualties is just not in balance with our success. I really do not like this shit. We are digging in. There is heavy artillery fire all day long. Under the cover of night, we are able to get closer to the line of bunkers. Thank goodness everything goes well and without much notice by the enemy. We take position without much fighting in the Gluacha forest at about midnight. Everything must be dug into the ground by morning. The bunker cannons and the Caucasian snipers snub out anyone who can be seen in the daylight. Heavy fire starts as expected around 5 o'clock hours. I am sitting in B position, Beobachter, or observer, and am able to see our impending doom as no one else can. The sap, short trench dug from the front trench, is right at the edge of the forest. From here the terrain slopes gently down to the Weita River. That damn river looks like it will drink a lot of blood, perhaps mine too. Behind the river is an enormous anti-tank trench filled with barbed wire. Well-camouflaged bunkers line the trench. The firing is coming from them. Death is rolling toward us. A crushing wall of fire crawls slowly, very slowly, up the hill. These Schweine shoot with a precision that could have only been learned through intensive training. Halfway up the hill, the firewall now reaches a tree-covered farmhouse. Cracking and splintering is heard when tree branches, wooden beams and bricks go swirling through the air. The stinking firewall moves on. Do not lose your nerves now, Hannes. I estimate that death will be arriving any minute now. Everybody has been warned. We claw our fingers into the dirt. We have sweat on our forehead out of fear. God, if we were at least able to defend ourselves. And then all hell breaks loose. There is a howling, an enormous roar, thundering, cracking, and the humming of thousands of splinters. Foul-smelling smoke floods into our trenches. Did this last seconds or minutes? I cannot say. I pull my nose carefully out of the dirt to see that the firewall has moved on. I remain deaf for minutes. There is something wet on my face. Blood. Thank goodness it is just a scratch. Our position is in chaos. The tree trunks we used for cover have been torn to shreds. Portions of the trenches have been filled back up with dirt. One position received a direct hit. 2 comrades were killed and 3 were wounded. Overall, we are lucky. It could have gone worse. This afternoon, artillery is brought into position in the forest to our rear. There are many cannons in addition to some mammoth calibers, which are probably mortars that will be used here for the very first time. The new cannons are hidden from view of us soldiers. Nightfalls and single shells are fired toward the enemy positions. One could call it a trial run. It is nice that our barbarians are letting us hear something from them. We receive orders to attack tomorrow at around 23 o'clock hours. My God, that is going to be tough. and to be honest, I am sick of it. Officers are standing next to the long-barrel cannons, howitzers, mortars and grenade launchers. They pressure the crews by staring at their wristwatches. The shorthand is going in circles. The final minute has just started. It seems to have no end. Hundreds of barrels spit their deadly loads into the sky. Howitzers, mortars and large-caliber long-barrel cannons begin their work. There is thundering and howling as death races toward the saps, bunkers, cannon positions, machine gun nests and trenches. Our artillery hammers down on the Wetter fortifications for 30 minutes. We switch to the attack at exactly 5:10 hours. Like many times before, we work hand in hand with the Sturmpioneren and the Flammenwerfer, flamethrowers. Against our expectations, everything went excellently. The entire attack unfolded as if it were on the training field in Ohrdruf. Within an hour, we are under the cover of the anti-tank trench on the banks of the Wetter, down from the wildly flaming bunkers. Our grenades fly through the bunker openings. Loads of explosives and flamethrowers polish them off. Surprise! 3 bunkers have been cleaned out, and a nice breach has been opened after just 2 hours. Now, how does that sound? My dear gentlemen, we shit a great deal in our pants during this nice scene from Wochenschau, German weekly newsreel. Quite a few have thrown their arms into the air, did an about-face, such an awkward movement, and fallen down stiff on the banks of the Wetter River. And by the way, we attacked the bunkers dressed as Adam, i.e. naked. I wonder if these Red Officer whores were decent enough to cover their eyes with their hands. Either way, it was necessary because of the mud in the river. What did the sergeant used to say? I can determine a soldier's character from the state of his uniform. Yes, dear Phipps, come to us and tell us about your states. Maybe you could fetch the clothes of the brave soldiers from the other side of the river. You see, we honoured your wishes and spared our clothes. We miss your grovelling speeches. We roll up Russian positions one after another. The hill across the Wetter is firmly in our hands by the afternoon. Only the village of Pocztowaja and the bridge are still occupied by the enemy. It has been planned to take the bridge in a swift action, since it is crucial for our motorised units. This time it is someone else's job to attempt this risky undertaking. We'll provide the fire protection. These guys go in forcefully. By nightfall, the bridge and village are cleansed of enemies. We are in charge of guarding the bridge after midnight. This is not without danger, since the Russians are placing well-targeted fire onto the bridge and village. Finally, after a few hours, we are relieved and take positions to guard the northern exit. Pocztowaja is in flames. We hear the crackling of the fires. Cows are bellowing somewhere out in the distance. They must be trapped in their barn and are burning alive. The wind drives thick clouds of smoke toward us. A trail of smoke is over the entire village. The fire glows red. The heat takes our breath away. Every other house is on fire. The cracking of rounds left behind by the Russians can be heard among the sizzling and crackling. We climb over hot debris. The wall of a house collapses nearby. Wounded soldiers are being carried past us. The fires light up a Red Cross flag. The singing of an airplane is above our heads. It is raining. The trenches that were dug so quickly are full of water. One lies in his dirt hole like a sack. Our uniforms are saturated with dirty yellow water. We lie trembling from the cold and fear in our bathtubs or water caskets. Volley after volley is fired to the other side. There are explosions all around us. They look like the arborvitae found around the Frankfurt Central train station. Trees of life. That is ironic. Death is walking through our lines here. We have 12 dead within half an hour. God damn it! If only at least the rain would stop. I cannot stand much longer looking at the red soup in the holes of our fallen soldiers. I don't like tomatoes, but I do love tomato soup. Disgusting. One could puke his guts out. The same comrades who attacked the bunkers on the Wetter yesterday, full of bravery, are now lying ripped apart in their holes. When a comrade receives that final blow ripping his guts out, one should no longer look at him. Whatever follows, does that not belong to him and his heroic efforts? It is ugly. Plain awful. I am tired. Tired of all that is around me. The regiment led an attack north of the cobblestone road this morning. These brave guys have made good progress, although under great casualties. They took Gatnoye and are near Shulyani at the gates of Kiev. It is too bad that they have left us here. The Russians have adjusted their fire excellently, aiming at both our positions and the road. It is noon and relatively quiet at the moment. They have stopped bothering us with the damn small calibers. They are probably out of ammunition. However, 3 huge ones arrive regularly every 5 minutes. Judging from the size of the craters, they must be coming from railroad cannon, which have demolished this fine road. Our mood is much better. The rain has stopped and even the sun has come out, which makes everything much better. At least we can leave our holes. Someone makes a joke and we laugh. Life does go on. Russian tanks have been announced. I take B position under a burned-out roof, crouched there with a scissor telescope. For 5 minutes everything is forgotten, the artillery fire and the danger. What a few minutes! The Battle of Kiev has reached its climax. A plain stretches all the way to the outskirts of the city. There are only a few outcroppings of trees and small rolling hills in the landscape. The radio towers are clearly visible behind the forest. To the left there are the suburbs of Shulyani and Mykoiska, and the big city with its 850,000 inhabitants, its beautiful churches and the citadel behind a few trails of smoke along the horizon. Down there is the battle. I see Russian artillery fire around every small forest on the plain. A cloud of shrapnel hangs over a crack in the ground like a ball of cotton. Waffentruppen are attacking a bunker over there. The drama comes to an end when the fire from a flamethrower appear. It is strange to sit up here so far away from the man-to-man battle. So far away, and yet so close through this telescope. It is odd to see the death struggle of comrades without my own life being threatened. A scissor telescope is a great device. A little twist of the knob and another individual scene of the brewing battle comes into focus. The red dogs attack a howitzer position. Friend and foe are butchering each other. I can see the infantry lines near Gatnoche. They are installing a machine gun position on the road out of the village. The firewall then rolls alongside the cobblestone road. Grey clouds hover over the Teremki forest. The humming of fighter planes is in the air. The sum of all the individually observed scenes, with their stirring images, truly deserves the name battle. Tramping horses, rattling engines, mud-covered motorcycle messengers, the burning torches that were once houses, the angry barking of machine guns, the wounded who turn their eyes up to the heavens, the recoiling of the cannons' hot muzzles, dark fountains of soil and smoke, the hissing of shrapnel, the humming of shells. Bawling, roaring, crackling, moaning, whistling, heaving. It's the 8th of August, day 2 of the Battle of Kiev.